Hello everyone, thank you so much for stopping by today. My name is Carey and today I plan to share with you guys all my summer reads. I'm an avid reader. I love books. I have a book going all the time on my phone and my audio books. I have a regular book next to my bedstand. I mean, seriously, guys, I'm constantly reading. And so today I thought I'd share some of the past reads that I've so much enjoyed that maybe you have heard about and maybe you haven't. But either way, I thought I'd give it to you because I know that every summer, when summer would come around, or just in general at any time, I am always willing to hear, hey, have you read this book? That to me are you just spiked my interest at that moment. I will turn around and listen to whatever you've got to say. So let's just jump right in and talk about the summer books that I think anyone out there might truly enjoy. I think girl or guy, honestly. So let's just jump right in. The first book I'm going to talk to you guys is called The Unseen World, and it's by Liz Moore. And it is, I would consider it a suspense fiction. It is about a man called David and his daughter Ada. It touches on the subject of Alzheimer's. It's set in 1980, in the 80s, and it's David is a computer science genius. Let me put it that way. He is a genius, and he runs the computer science lab in a university in Boston. And it then proceeds to unravel this amazing story that you really honestly don't see it coming. I absolutely love the book. It is a adult fiction book, and it is so well written. I enjoyed every second of that book, and I highly recommend it. The second book I would recommend, it's actually a series, and it's a fantasy-based series, and I do believe this book is YA, young adult, but you know what? I'm always young at heart. And it's The Queen of the Tearling, and it's by Erika Johansen. She also wrote The Invasion of the Tearling. It's a series, it's a 2-book series, and it is a fantasy series. It is about a young girl, and her name is Kelsey, and she is raised very isolated up until I think the age of 13, where she is then informed that she is the queen of the Tearling, and she has to come into the Tearling and assume her throne. The Tearling has been severely suppressed by a nearby queen called the Red Queen, and it is a really, really interesting story. It develops beautifully, but it intertwines two different realities, two different realms, and I cannot tell you that, it was just so good. I really, really did enjoy it. It kept my interest throughout. I liked the first book as much as I enjoyed the second one. There are some series where I'm like, oh, I don't care so much for the second, and I'll share one like that, but I did very much enjoy this series. I would recommend it to anyone who enjoys sci-fi, fantasy, or even like historical fiction, because it is just got a little bit of all those aspects in it. The third book I would recommend is The Martian by Angie Weir, and I recommended that in my top books of 2016, but I had to bring it as a summer read because it is probably one of the funniest books I have ever read. Laugh out loud funny. I found myself at certain points just having to put my book down and giggling because it was just so funny. Mark Watney, the main character, is a man who is part of the space program and is sent on a Mars mission with a group of other astronauts, and he, unfortunately, by some freak accident, is left behind on Mars. And the whole premise of the book, and actually if you've seen the movie with Mark Damon in it, is getting him home. The movie does not do this book justice, so if you saw the movie, yes, it touches on, it's loosely based on the book, but the book is just so much richer. I love, love, love the book. It's just so entertaining. I think it has some language in it, but very, very, just in places where you would have probably said the same thing. So I highly recommend The Martian. I think you will giggle if you're a man or a woman, or a young adult. I think it's a really great read. The fourth book I'll recommend this year is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. It's an urban fiction set like in current day. In fact, it's very much a current day subject. And I'll loosely say that it's based on lives matter. And I won't say which way they matter. They just all matter. Seriously, people. But I love the way Angie Thomas takes this subject and just breaks it down. I love the way she writes. I absolutely enjoyed this book so much. The star is the main character in this book, and she is a feisty young woman raised in a very urban setting, but her parents doing everything possible to allow her a better future, and but yet staying true to their roots. I love this book. I cannot recommend it enough. I think that this is a YA book, but I think any adult should read it because it is so relevant to things that are going on right now in our society here in the United States. I think that any young person would enjoy this book. It just makes a subject that's so hard to talk about almost makes it so relatable because the characters become very real. I highly recommend that book. I think you'll enjoy it. It's not a really big book, so I think it's one of those that you could take with you on a plane or, you know, on a vacation, and you would really enjoy it. My fifth book that I want to recommend is along the same lines, but just a little bit different. It's called The Sun is Also a Star, and it is by Nicola Yoon. I hope I said that right, Nicola Yoon. It's a YA book as well, young adult, but it has such an interesting subject matter. It is about a young girl, her name is Natasha, and a young man, and his name is Daniel, and it all takes place in a 24-hour day premise. Natasha is facing the harrowing truth to her of being deported from the United States. And Daniel is from a Korean family, first generation Korean family who has come to America for a better future for their children. And they meet. And in that 24 hours, their lives are absolutely entangled and transformed by one another. I think it is an amazing book. It makes you very aware of the emotions that run through someone who is having to face deportation, and the emotions of someone and the responsibility of the young people from first generation families that come to the United States looking for a better future. It also has a spin on love and how, you know, the nature of human beings and how we fall in love. I think it was so well written. I love the idea of it being a 24-hour kind of thing where you're walking with them on their step-by-step and all the people on their path that they touch. I think it was very well written, loved the whole premise of the book, and highly recommend it to anyone who wants a light, I don't want to say light, it doesn't leave you burdened like some other books can, but it also makes you think, and so it's a great read. The next book is called China Dolls by Lisa C, and it's set in, I think it's 1938, with the San Francisco State Fair. This story develops around 3 young women that are growing up into themselves in that particular world. There's Grace, who's a Midwestern Chinese girl. There's Helen, who is raised by a very strict and proper Chinese family. And then there's Helen, who is the free spirit of the bunch. And they all come together, and you can see what their development as a person, what their development in their career, how they are part of that society, and how they absolutely break through that world. They don't allow the limits that are being placed on them by what society sees Chinese women of that time as being. I thought it was just so such a good read, guys. Also, it's not a very thick book. It's a book that makes you think about women and how difficult life really was back in the 1940s. This develops during the World War II period, during the Pearl Harbor bombing, and some of these girls have to live out the stigma and the prejudice that comes upon them and their families based on their nationality. And so I really enjoyed this book. I think that you should give it a shot, especially if you like historical fiction. It is so interesting, and each of these characters is beyond interesting and fun. Some of them are, some stages they're just so uplifting, and at some stages they are just in despair. So guys, I recommend it. Lisa C did a great job with this book, and I think any woman, or I think anyone, would absolutely enjoy reading this. The next book that I really want to recommend is Illuminae by Annie Kaufman. This book is written in a very different style, and actually it's part of a series. It's Illuminae is the first book and Jamina is the second book. I personally did not like Jamina, and I have to be honest with you, I started it and didn't finish it. But Illuminae, the first one in the series, it's a standalone book in my opinion. You don't have to read book 2 in order to complete it. And so therefore I feel that I can recommend it. It is a pretty thick book, but the way it's written in a conversation style. It's a compilation of documents that are found, videos that are found, and they're all put together to create this almost diary-like book, and it's called Illuminae. And it is a sci-fi book, definitely futuristic sci-fi. We're talking about a different planet. It is written very much kind of like the Screwtape Letters is written by C.S. Lewis. It is written in a way that, so it took me a little bit to get into it because, you know, you really don't have much of a background as you go in. It is a YA book, young adult, but again, I'm very young at heart, and the subject matter was just so interesting. So I really do recommend Illuminae by Annie Kaufman. And the last book I want to recommend is called Cathedral by the Sea, and it's by Idelfonso Falcones. He is a Spanish writer, and this book is set in 14th century Spain. It's a medieval book, so it is definitely a historical fiction set in that medieval cased Spanish system. And it is about a character named Arnu. And I read this book, I would say, almost 7 or 8 years ago, but it's one of those books that makes you go back and think. The closest I can kind of compare this book to would be Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett, and it's on the premise of building a cathedral by the sea in Spain. And it's this character, Arnu, and his growth from young adulthood all the way up until becoming a very prominent member of that society. I think it is a very well written book. It was translated from Spanish, but you can't tell because of the way that it was done. It was beautiful. It takes you, I love reading about architecture. And so this book really fed into that side of my brain that just loves to see how things were done back in those days when they didn't have power tools like we have nowadays, and how they built this amazing cathedral on the blood, sweat, and tears of real people, and how different ethnic groups within that same society either came together to build this cathedral, and at times tried to destroy one another in the process of building this cathedral. It shows just how human we are. Even nowadays, we're dealing with those same subject matters they dealt with back in the 1400s. I think Idelfonso Falcones did a great job in translating history and in allowing it almost to become something that you are reliving in the process. I highly recommend this book. It's one of those books that makes me go back and think. And I'll be 8 years later, I'll be walking by and I'll be like, wow. And that's what they went through. You know, it just keeps coming back. And so you know that a book has really lived itself out in your mind when you can go back to it 8 years later and it is still almost like as if you were reading it today. I really recommend that book, and I hope that it is a big book. It is just as thick probably as Ken Follett's Pillars of the Earth. But if you enjoyed that one, you will definitely enjoy Cathedral by the Sea by Idelfonso Falcones. Guys, thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes to listen to what books I recommend you read this summer. I hope that my reviews were thorough enough for you to want to read it, but not enough that will ruin the book for you. I thank you once more for coming by. Have a blessed day. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you like the reviews, give me a thumbs up. Bye!